Welcome to episode 3 of The Shift, where we talk about AI and how it's changing today's consumer. Today's episode, we're talking about the new search party, specifically looking at how consumer behaviors changing around search behavior. Is Google losing its grip? We don't know. We'll try and answer it today, though.
Find out now. Yeah, I think it's an interesting world we're living in now where people aren't actually looking for information as directly anymore. They're not searching as opposed to delegating to AI the effort of crawling through websites. Like if I'm looking for a hotel, for example, like will I ask ChatGPT to s- pull all that information together, or am I going to spend 10 minutes calling through
Yeah.
every single link online? It's really an interesting new opportunity for businesses as well, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think let's start with the scale and the setting of this. I think 37% of consumers are now starting their searches with AI instead of Google, which is quite a staggering figure, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the other interesting part of it, I think, is the rate of adoption. The fact that it only took 2 months for ChatGPT to reach 100 million users is kind of
Yeah, it's
mad.
crazy. I think it took the internet 4 years to reach that many users, and the telephone 75 years. So it's crazy like how quickly this has snowballed. And I don't think, in terms of talking about a consumer shift, this is probably one of the most staggering ones that we're finding is this completely new way that people are engaging with the internet.
And I think when you think about search historically and, Google, the king of search, queries tend to be, I think the average length of a keyword search is kind of like 3 to 5 words, generally quite transactional or descriptive. And everything we're seeing now is going a lot more conversational with the query in the first place. And a bit like you said before, like consumers have fatigue around finding information for themselves now. You're going on holiday, you're no longer trawling through 3 or 4 different top 10 lists of hotels. You're asking AI to kind of collate that information for you. So I think what does that do to your business in terms of like visibility? If your website's not getting clicks anymore, or if you're a business that's reliant on publishing this kind of information,
Mm.
what does it do? It's a very interesting time.
Yeah, I think a good comparison, I think we were talking about the other day, is comparing the internet to a shop. You walk around, you check the shelf, and try and see what you're looking for. And SEO, which is search engine optimization, which some of you may or may not be familiar with, essentially the process of making sure you're at eye line with the shopper, right? Like you're listed above everyone else. But now with GEO, which is generative engine optimization, it's essentially AI is playing the role of a shopkeeper. It's guiding you to the result, or it's pulling all the products together and bringing it to your doorstep. So people aren't clicking as much as they used to. The effort of being online and looking for what you want is been completely eradicated, essentially.
Yeah, well rewritten for sure, I think.
Yeah, I think it's also the change in gatekeeper. Google was really the gatekeeper for consumers that the consumers had to interact with in order to find the information they were looking for. But now AI is the new gatekeeper that brands have to start appeasing. SEO is the practice of sort of brands elbowing for space at the top of Google, but now it's actually a lot more complicated than just, I guess, paying and paying against certain keywords.
Yeah, and to that point that there are more ways and more platforms, I guess, being used to discover information. Google are starting to lose a little bit of their monopoly on that market.
Yeah, I think below 90% their market share since 2015.
Yeah, the first time it's fallen below that number. And actually, they're responding by completely reimagining how search works as well. I mean, I think just this week, hot off the press, May 19th, they introduced or they announced their new approach to search. So, kind of more AI driven search. And what that includes is bigger search boxes. So again, traditionally the search box in Google is actually quite condensed. It's optimized towards those short searches. The search box itself is going to become like adaptive depending on the length of the query that you're typing in. And then I think we're going to see pretty fundamental changes in the results pages as well. So they're talking about agentic search agents. So this idea that agents, like you were saying before, can go off and complete different tasks while you I guess, while you're in the interface. So whether that's trawling kind of recommendation lists, as well as kind of coding within the search results as well. So really that will be kind of presenting information back to you in dynamic, interactive and interesting ways. And that takes us very far past the traditional list of links with headline and description that we're used to.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not just how information is presented, but also how you expect to receive information. Like conversational interactions with Google are now going to become a reality, whereas beforehand you just bubbled down your search, hotel in Barcelona, restaurants close by, maybe on a separate tab, and now you can basically have it all in one. I'm in Barcelona for the weekend. I'm a massive foodie. Is there anywhere I can stay
Yeah.
close to an interesting area? And also building an understanding of you going on. I'm not sure that Google search in its current state has a real contextual understanding of you as a researcher. So there's something quite interesting in how it can really become your personal assistant. Go off and do, I mean, I don't know if I'm quite at the point where I'd give it my credit card, but it can go off and basically take care of parts of your life for you.
Yeah. And I think to your point before about the holiday, like rather than having all those separate tabs and all those separate searches and you being the one that pulls it together, like what Google's vision, or at least what their kind of press release says about this release is, it will build the itinerary and it won't only help you build it in terms of what you want to do, it's going to present it back in like a beautiful kind of HTML artifact that you can, refer back to and follow on your trip. And obviously, that's Google reacting to the landscape. And Google does have like the search market still. I mean, below 90% is still a pretty impressive stat. But obviously, all of these things are possible and being done in Claude, ChatGPT already.
It reminds me of the story about the yellow pages in the 1880s in Wyoming, I think it was, where literally they ran out of white paper when they were printing this business directory and they went for yellow, and businesses started elbowing each other for space on the yellow pages simply because it was different and novel. And I think we're seeing a similar shift where brands are really beginning to elbow each other for space on these language models. But the process behind it is a little bit more complicated than simply getting printed, right? Or paying for to map your brand against key search words like SEO. There's a lot more involved, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I think so. Like, at the moment, there has been no real advertising release around advertising and AI. Obviously, ChatGPT have done it in the US, but very limited to big budget Fortune 500 brands. It's all a bit murky. There's no kind of like self-service platform. Google are obviously the most naturally positioned to migrate their existing ad product into like an AI driven ad product, or an ad product that starts kind of surfacing your brand into AI. But in the meantime, brands are left to what we're referring to as GEO, so generative engine optimization. And I think the things that you as a business need to do to appear well in GEO, or to rank in, not rank, I guess, but to surface in results is very different to SEO. And
Yeah.
also like the language that you use on your website maybe isn't what you would be minded to write if you're trying to appeal to a consumer either.
Yeah. Well, AI needs to be able to infer your meaning very simply, right? And AI crawling bots that will crawl through your website to find the most useful information possible, they don't need to meet any resistance, whether it's information that's in an animation or something that's difficult to render. That takes energy on the part of the AI to render and process, and particularly trying to pick apart your meaning. So if your brand says it's the best pizza in New York or something, is that statement substantiated throughout your website? And have you won awards for it? That sort of thing. It's like making sure that the proof is not far away from the statement that you're
I
making.
think that's it. I think that's a really good practical example that we can pull on. So like, if you are the best pizza in New York, if you want to be surfaced by the AI for that exact search term, you need to validate that point and you need to reference it. So how many reviews do you have versus the next best pizza in New York? You know, the most reviewed pizza in New York. Well, that's now a validated point. Did you win the best margarita award of 2026? It's a validated point. But AI is not going to accept general terms or general claims. I think if you want to appear for something, you have to figure out what is genuinely true about your brand, your business, or your product, and develop the required substantiation around that in order to get surfaced.
Yeah, and not just your proof as well. And it's third party validation is becoming important as well. Not just other websites referencing you, whether it's, I don't know, the Pizza Trophy Awards
Yeah.
landing page linking you, but also Reddit is being pulled from quite a lot. Social media, these AI bots will crawl through Reddit threads. And if there's, without hands down, 80% of Redditors on these pizza forums, it's making me hungry just talking about this, agree that it's the best pizza in the world, then it'll take that opinion seriously, which just emphasizes the importance of word of mouth for brands as well. Quite, I mean, historically, brands have been able to control the narrative surrounding their brand through their websites or through their copy. But now the opinion of the consumer has a direct effect on the traffic that you're receiving. So it's even more important than ever to control that. AI is also beginning to trust more what other people say about you than what you say about yourself. Reddit, for example, is a massive channel that is being cited by AI in 7.5% of responses, roughly. A Reddit thread out there debating whether your service is the best one in town or your restaurant is the highest quality is going to become as important to AI and its response as your website. So you're no longer the gatekeeper of the narrative surrounding your brand. Word of mouth and what the public think about you is now more important than ever. And controlling that is gonna become a new prerogative.
Yeah. I mean, for the marketers out there, in this sense, it's not actually that different to the principles of SEO in a way.
Yeah, not
You
at all.
know, optimize your content, but the way you're optimizing it is now different. It's not about keywords, it's not about H1 tags or title tags. And then, what you would traditionally kind of refer to as link building, getting your website linked from multiple sources, is more now about like citation and context building. The more places that you can have, the more people saying the same thing about your business, your brand, or your product, the more likely you are to start surfacing in AI results for that. But I think the thing to really hammer home here is that generic won't do. Like you
No,
you
not at
you
all.
you really need to nail down like what is a single truth.
It's also brand sentiments that people put out all the time. We're not just best pizza in New York, but, we're committed to excellence, or, we work on innovative solutions and business transformative
Yeah,
technologies.
our people are our difference.
Exactly. Like, what does that mean? Like, if a consumer can't dissect your statement, then AI certainly isn't going to be able to. It needs to be able to lift that sentence or the paragraph out of your website and be able to understand it in isolation. So the burden on brands to articulate themselves in a way that is clear is becoming even more important. And to be able to, map your statement onto all the activity on your website. I think the way to think about it is that brand is how a company or an agency or product articulates itself. And I think that articulation is going to be the key, right? And if AI reads your website, and not just your website, your ad performance or public opinion of you, how well articulated your brand is going to determine whether AI thinks you're dependable enough, really. Like, are your values, sometimes people think terms like values are fluffy, but now they're actually going to have a real commercial impact on whether you surface. Is your are the principles of your brand permeating all your behaviors and all your ads, and are your products and services aligning with what you're saying about your products and services? Is the value of your product well expressed in the headline of your campaign?
Yeah.
And also the on the consumer end, like, are your consumers going to agree with you on Reddit? Um, this whole journey of, or we should say, the life cycle of your service or product is going to become relevant. It's not just the top end in your website where you can control the narrative. It's almost out of the hands of brands now. What they can control, however, is what the AI reads.
The one word that comes to mind for me as you say all of that, which I think is a really important takeaway, is alignment. You know, AI has this ability to very quickly look at hundreds of thousands of sources and come to an opinion, and you need to be aligned across your comms and your products and actually how you act in order to show up well.
Brands are going to start seeing a reduction in clicks through to their website simply because the AI is pulling everything the consumer needs for them. I think it's 60% roughly reduction in clicks in the EU, or user journeys ending without a click. And you can't really blame them. And even some of the times, AI doesn't even surface links in its responses. So there will be a reduction in web traffic in performance, but not to fear. They're getting the information they need, and it might lead to a conversion down the line.
So what we're really saying is that the conversion path is still there, but it's being diverted, right?
Yeah,
It's not
absolutely.
it's not the traditional search, click, explore website, convert, add to basket, check out. You know, it's a much more complicated journey, I think, in some ways, and a journey where brand arguably is even more important because you're not buying the click, because you're not getting the customer onto your website immediately. What the AI says about you has to be memorable,
Yeah, yeah.
and you have to be memorable or authentic to get in the result in the first place. In many ways, people don't know for sure what leads to better AI performance, right? There's lots of theories, but it is a bit of a black box. Some of the things we've noticed start with language. So start with matching the way that people tend to search and expect answers with the way you present information on your website.
It's not just clarity of language. We said before around authorship and, substantiating any claims that you make on your web page, but also structure as well. FAQs, answering queries early. So, structuring it into subheaders. These are all ways that make the AI's user, quote unquote, user journey simplifies.
Yeah, and I think a really important point of that is that AI companies do not want to spend compute, right?
Yeah.
So the further down a page an AI agent has to go, or the more work it has to do to read a PDF to, uncover a bit of information about you, the worse. Like clearly structured, clearly signposted information reduces the compute requirement of the AI and increases the likelihood of it actually getting to that information and using it.
All the more it has to render, right? Like if your website completely relies on flash and animation and every piece of useful information is in a video, or the AI is not gonna want to load that video. It would rather go to your competitor who has everything it needs on one page. And it's not to say that websites lose their color and their character. It just means that you have to keep in mind to the information that is presented. So it's a triple really. It's the citability, so how well referenced you are or how substantiated you are. Scannability, so how is the structure of your information? Does it align with, as you just said, the structure, of an AI response? And then building it for prompts, the language of a prompt, bit more conversational, bit more down to earth. And then the main one, sorry, the fourth one, is language that actually makes sense and language that says something, and that isn't overly sentimental or fluffy. Having a headline that says, um, we're passionate about transformative solutions. AI is not going to be able to pick that
I
apart.
mean, I
So
don't know what that means,
yeah,
so
yeah. I mean, I'll do my best to figure it out. Yeah. Okay, so there's episode 3 of The Shift. So what we've covered is essentially the importance of articulating your brand with clarity, structuring your websites in a way that makes you intelligible to AI search, but also the interesting new developments that are happening in from Google and all these big tech players to essentially shift the user experience of information.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the key takeaways. You know, we're recording this episode today. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? The pace of change in this arena is just so rapid. It's increasingly important to be curious, test things for yourself as well. Um, and yeah, keep listening.